How to handle customer doubts and resistance part 2. This time we will go into the major technique for managing and overcoming objections in greater depth and detail in this video. Let's start with a very psychological technique, that is the pause technique. When the objection arrives, you take a deep breath and pause. Remember, we are not obligated to respond right away, particularly if the objection is serious, and after a few seconds of silence, you probably get the client to talk again. You gain time to think and gather information from the customer as a result of this. That would have been the initial approach. However, if the client is silent and refuses to communicate, you must adopt the second option. You must speak. Give your answer if you are certain and it is correct and proceed with the interview. But if you are not 100% sure you have a valid answer, then ask an open and neutral question and make a new pause. You will be surprised how effective this technique is. This is a magnificent technique if well used, as it is very psychological. Pauses are highly effective, more than you can imagine, both to know when to speak and listen and in all kinds of dialogues. Be sure this is effective and not only in professional environments, but in our day-to-day communications with our family and friends. Pauses always feel long to us, although they are far shorter than they appear. The pause creates the rhythm in our verbal communication. 3 reasons for pauses in handling objections. 1. Psychological, because it allows us to collect further information or the client response on the regular basis. 2. If we are 100% sure of knowing what it is behind the objection, pause to think about the answer. 3. If we are not 100% sure of knowing what is behind the objection, pause to find it. Use test questions. Example, why do you say that, Mr. Client? Or can you expand on that point, Mr. Client? Or what are you referring to, Mr. Client? 2. Technique of conditional acceptance. It is a sine qua non condition, that is, a condition without which no, or indispensable, to be able to apply this technique, that when the objection arrives, the seller has a clearly and in advance a good solutions for that objection. Then 2 alternatives are proposed. The first is to answer the objection by overcoming it, since the seller has a good answer to overcome that objection. But then it could happen that with some clients with a highly developed ego, the ego wakes up. And when the client sees the great ease and speed with which the seller has resolved and overcome his problem, his resistance, his strong objection, the client feels annoyed, somewhat humiliated, and almost forced to demonstrate to the seller that he can put much harder difficulties. And with this, without knowing it, the seller becomes a stimulus for the customer, that now he searches his mind for new difficulties, objections to put to the seller, and now let's see if he is capable of surpassing them. Yes, sometimes it's not advisable to answer too fast. It could be seen as a provocation. In short, we will be entering in an egos competition between the customer and the seller, and it is clear that this path does not interest us. The second alternative is that since the seller knows that he can overcome the objection with ease, what he does is apply this magnificent technique of conditional acceptance in the following way and in a practical way. And it tells the client when the objection arrives, I understand, Mr. Client, but tell me, if it were not for this problem, would you be willing to, or If what you tell me could be resolved to your satisfaction, then would you be willing to seriously consider my proposal, enter into the final formalization of the operation, etc.? If the client says yes, you have already closed it, since you have used conditional acceptance, and since you have the answer beforehand, you say, Mr. Client, could we solve this in this way? At that moment, you overcome the objection and the client has been committed to you, because by saying yes, the client accepts that if that problem disappeared, there will be automatically no longer any resistance on his part to accept our proposal. The conditional acceptance, in fact, is a partial close. Acceptance and steps to be achieved throughout the sales interview to reach the main close. It is also a test closing to know the customer purchase temperature at a certain time and also to extract a hiding objection that may exist. And it is also, for sure, a final closing. 3. The Boomerang Technique. Who does not know the operation of that archaic hunting weapon used by the Australian Aborigines? When the boomerang is thrown and does not hit the target, the boomerang returns spinning intensively into the hands of the hunter. This is easy to say than to do. I tried, never worked for me. I mean the weapon, not the sales techniques, that I can ensure works. I have been using it for the past 10 years as a sales consultant. This boomerang technique is developed when the client tells us something that we know that they are truly wrong about. And more than an objection, what the client is telling us and giving us is a good argument to buy, with having realized his error. He may have been misunderstood what he said, or he may have misread what he said. We already know that our competition does not eat, does not sleep or rest, trying to scratch from the part of our market share, and sometimes infuses against us in the market. If that is the case, what we do with the boomerang technique is return the objection to the client. But how? The boomerang is not a question, the boomerang is a declaration. And it is usually begins with the word precisely, Mr. Client. Because of that, you are telling me, that is why you should accept my proposal. You have to realize that, and I undo his mistake, leaving him without the ability to react. Let's not be too soft when finding ourselves dealing with objections, but courteous and polite, but firm in our position with the client. Courteousness does not take away bravery, and always return to the side of the need in the sales balance when we are trying to overcome objections, so that the client is aware of the need that he has. 4. The yes but technique. How many times in our ordinary life, when proposing something to someone, that person squints, pauses, and says, yes, but... After the first and second yes, we already know that the but is coming. And the but means you are wrong. This is an old, worn, but useful technique. What you have to do is to change it. And the yes, change it to an I understand, Mr. Client. In this way, we avoid yes, but by saying, I understand, Mr. Client. We, in this case, understanding is not sharing even if the client thinks we accept his point of view. And the but change it to we or my company, etc. 5. The reduction and counterbalance technique. Let's contemplate the balance of the sales with the price on the customer's plate and the profits on the seller's plate. The technique consists of first, reduction, that is, I have to remove weight. Remove the entirety from the customer's plate with the price in the customer's eyes, dividing the price by something. With this action of reducing the weight of the customer's plates, the balance begins to unbalance in our favor. And second comes the counterbalance, where I go back to my plate as a seller, that of the benefits, further unbundling the benefits that the client is going to obtain. In this way, I get a tipping from the balance in my favor as a seller. Let's complete this development with when to answer objections. We have 4 possibilities. 1. Before the objection occurs, with preventive argumentation and to maintain the initiative of the interview with the client. 2. Immediately, with the different techniques for overcoming objections. 3. Later, postpone the objections or use a conditional acceptance. For example, right away, okay, Mr. Client, we are going to solve what you are telling me, but first let me. 4. Never. When you detect that the objection is insincere, be careful here. This can be dangerous. Maybe we should admit the difficulty in this situation to sell to this particular client, so here maybe we will not close the sale. This is a very useful way to react to possible resistance to buy from our customers, so we will talk more about it in future videos. And okay, if you are interested in our videos, I suggest you give a like and subscribe to our channels in English and Spanish, as we publish videos every week.